So anytime we're using any of these tools, as you say, to mask the experience or the symptoms that we're experiencing without going to the root of whatever the issue is, then potentially we're turning all these medicines into poison.
The amazing thing about the mushrooms is that they speak. They talk to you. They will answer questions, carry on conversations. Psilocybin just pulls up a chair on the porch and puts its feet up.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Psilocybin Says. I'm your co-host, Eric Osborne. My wife, Courtney, and I have a wonderful conversation in store for you today. This one is one we've been wanting to talk about for a while. I had a medical doctor I worked with once in Jamaica who told me when we were talking about toxicology and substances, and he said, the poison is in the dose. And I thought, boy, is that right. Anything is medicine and anything is poison depending on how you work with it. It's all about balance. And that's what this conversation is about. So hopefully in listening to it, you will be inspired to instill more balance in your life. That's a big part of what the mushrooms help us do, and it's a big part of what community and accountability can do. Please do go give us that 5-star rating on your podcast platform of choice. Also, don't forget to check me out on Psilocybin live streamed every Monday night at 7 Eastern. That's coming through Facebook and YouTube on the Psilocybin Says pages. This live stream is where we discuss any and everything as it relates to psilocybin and where you, the listener, can get involved in the conversation. There is a link always posted in the chat where you can just click it, hop in, get in the queue, ask your question, make your comment, tell me how crazy all this is, or whatever it is you have to say. We just love talking with our audience, and I sure do look forward to seeing you there.
So I noticed you were enjoying that poison in
Fifth cup of coffee.
In that cup there.
I think one more cup would be poison.
Was it really your fifth cup?
No, that's my third. Really, it's 2.5. I fill up a cup, and then I use the remaining for another half cup, and then I make another cup. That's kind of my routine.
So it sounds like it doesn't become a problem until you've reached a certain amount of consumption.
You know, I guess I base that on when I start feeling jittery, but maybe I should pull back before then.
Interesting.
I guess one of the questions that I have around this is, when do we actually start to know that we're consuming too much of what we're consuming?
Yeah, so this brings up some interesting things for me, thinking about
chocolate.
Hey, I didn't have
Just
any
kidding.
chocolate yesterday.
And yet somehow you made it through the day.
There were times
I'm sure.
where I wondered.
Anyway, sorry I interrupted you. Has you thinking about what?
Has me thinking about my relationship with, how do I say it? Wellness practices, or things that I used to consider as detrimental to my growth, like psychedelics back in the day, I thought were horrible and harmful, and has me thinking about how in my life, more so in the past, but still now, my relationship with things and seeing things as kind of like an all or nothing. Activities as an all or nothing, lifestyle choices as an all or nothing. And how I'm learning that more and more, it's more about the balance of the things. And like you mentioned, assessing your feeling as you're engaging with something, with coffee, for instance, how you start to feel a certain way. And like, that's how you know, okay, maybe it's time to refocus or.
Yeah, but I think before that even. There are times when I know drinking a cup of coffee is going to feel good. And then there's times that I know that it's not going to feel so good. And yet I do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. So that last cup or whatever might be too much, because there's definitely times that I think, should I really do this? Do I really want to do this? And then I just do it because it's the habit. Mm-hmm. And then there's times that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do this. This is going to be great.
Yes.
And that's when I know really whether it's good for me or not.
The feeling of excitement.
I mean, tobacco's the same way.
And joy.
There are times when I know a cigarette is going to do me good. This is going to be a good thing. And then there's times when I know, like, oh, I definitely do not want that. And it comes in waves, you know. Not everything is something that we do every day. Tobacco is something that I just very, very occasionally engage with these days. And I try very much to listen to that intuitive sense of this is a good thing right now.
It seems like an indicator of maybe it's time to refocus, get a different perspective, not engage with this, whatever it is, substance, practice, is even just like the hesitation or the questioning of it. Like, should I or should I not? That's almost like...
It's kind of tough, though. There's a lot of things like exercise.
It is. It's tricky.
You know, mushrooms. Like, do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Gosh. We live in such an interesting place. It's like there's really no black and white answer.
I don't think there's black and white anything.
Right.
It's all a mix.
Are you looking for a community that allows you to authentically express and explore what it means to be human? One that honors the divinity within you and all life? Then Sanctuary may be just the community you have been looking for. Sanctuary is a faith-based organization centered around the sacrament of sacred mushrooms for spiritual exploration and personal development. You are invited to become a member and commune with us. Join us for a Sunday Zoom service or a weekend sacred mushroom retreat in the beautiful Kentucky countryside. Visit psanctuary.org to become a member and find more information.
Yeah, like this drink that I'm drinking right here. If anyone's interested, I know how to make, if you live in the Louisville area, you know about Heine Brothers, and there's this drink. It's like a blended iced drink, kind of like at Starbucks. They have the Frappuccinos. Well, this local coffee chain has this one that's called the Beekeeper. I know how to make it exactly. This is like a $7 drink that I know how to make at home for a fraction of the cost. And I figured it out in the fall of last year. And once I figured it out, I go so excited. I had this joy about it. And I drank it and I was like, yes, Eureka, I figured it out. I make the best one. I don't know. It's so good. And then I just kept drinking it because I associated this joy in enjoying the beverage once in a while from my local coffee chain. But now here I am. I can make it every day at home. So I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to make it every day. And then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, here I am. I've been drinking it every day. And I'm like, well, time to make the drink that I've been making every day again. And I was kind of like, it became a routine thing that I no longer had joy and excitement about. And then I started to resent it. Like, I don't even want this.
You stupid beekeeper. Have a drink of that.
Yeah, but then, so I had to kind of have a talk with myself, like, because it's not, it's a dessert. It's a dessert drink.
That
like,
is a rich drink. Wow.
It's very rich. And I started having like some tummy stuff. after I drank it, I was drinking it every day. So I was like, all right, it's time to reassess this, Courtney. Like, let's have a heart to heart here. And I was like, I'm not going to drink it. And ever since, it's been like 3 months or 4 months or something since I've made it. And I just saw what I used to make it in the cabinet. And it came over me, this joy and excitement. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want right now. So just that process of taking breaks from things and getting perspective it's interesting.
Yeah.
How that can bring back the joy. So how does this relate to like exercise? Like, for instance, for you, I mean, like we talked about this on a recent episode, right? Where you've just started working out again or lifting weights. And like, I don't know, like, have you felt since you've started lifting weights again, resistance to it?
No, I found myself resisting the temptation to do nothing else or to go too heavy into it. I definitely have a tendency towards extremes, if you haven't noticed. And yeah, so it anything that I enjoy, I have to maintain that level of awareness. And I guess I'm just trying to pinpoint some areas where that becomes blurry, right? It has been in the past. It's been like that with tobacco. It's been like that with cannabis. It's a little bit, yeah, it's definitely been that way with alcohol. It's been quite a while since it's been like that with alcohol. And even, we talked about news in one of our podcasts that it's been a challenge there to moderate consumption of various forms of media over the years. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out when is it that I start to recognize that my medicine has become a poison. And it's usually later than I would like it to be. So I don't know if there's some ideas that you might have on how I could catch that a little quicker. Seems like you do better with that. Aside from chocolate and coffee, you're pretty good at saying, okay, I've had enough of this right now. I'm going to
working.
Put it aside. Yeah, and working.
Yeah, we've all got our things. Well, I'm not sure if I have any ideas. They're really just reflecting on my own experience and how it seems like if I'm in a place where I'm more calm, like if I have practices where I'm allowing myself to get away and just like be with myself, like self-care, as some might call it, really just having a time every week that I'm just spending time with myself to feel my feelings. I notice that helps me a lot and can help me break unhealthy cycles if there are any going on, just by getting away from the routine at home, which usually involves work, because we've been working from home. So doing that yoga class that I've been doing every Tuesday, which I'm really grateful that you've continued to encourage me to go, even when I felt resistance to it, which is another one of those tricky things. But it's really helped me just having something where I'm still, because it's a yin yoga class, so it's very meditative. And helps me slow down. And it usually takes almost half the class for my mind, for me to like detach from my thoughts and like see the difference between, okay, here's me and here's these thoughts that I can let go of. Like they're not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a big part of what we're talking about is getting really attached and associating something external to us with like thinking that we need that in order to be happy.
So what I'm curious right now about is how humans are the only animals that will knowingly poison themselves.
Really? Do you know that?
Do you know of any animal that it will like completely overindulge in anything enough to make themselves sick?
Probably rats.
To make themselves sick? I mean, they might be overweight or something, but like even in studies with rats, they've shown that addiction is more of an outcome of isolation than any kind of biochemical process, which is a bit of a different topic altogether. But at the same time, I think there's a fair amount of crossover here that the healthier our environment is, then the healthier we are likely to be. But it's curious to me that humans are the only animals that will like just way over consume and pretty much everything. So, and what I think comes up is the mind. You know, what you talk about the mind, the thoughts running, and so many times these behaviors that we overindulge in may have to do with like a mental loop that we're in or trying to avoid our thoughts in some way.
Yeah, I'd like to go into that a little bit more. Like for you, when you felt this, for instance, you mentioned feeling like you wanted to just keep lifting weights at times, just keep going and not stop, overindulge in the experience. When you reflect on that, what's going through your consciousness in those times? Like, are you like, what thoughts are present? And
It's trying to get what I want right now, which is I want to have a stronger, more balanced body, and this is the pathway to it. So I just figure if I just have more of it right now, then I'll get what I want sooner. It's kind of maybe similar to a medicine, if we will, like a supplement or something, that if we take 1,000 times the vitamin C that we need, we'll be more healthy. And I mean, it's not the best example because at least I'm pretty sure you can't overdose on vitamin C, or is that wrong? Can you?
it's water soluble, but I'm sure, I know you can get like kind of sick, like you can make yourself.
So whatever,
stuff,
just thinking like, more isn't always better in terms of getting what we want out of the thing that we want. But this is like actually a pretty triggering and challenging topic for me because I am such a kind of extreme all in or all out kind of person, or have been, that it triggers some like shame and guilt feelings. I can look at several aspects of my life over the years that I have challenged to find balance in, and I'm trying to understand why I feel that kind of tinge of shame and guilt right now. And I don't really have a good answer for it. I just know that I feel it. As soon as we started talking about this and I started reflecting on some of my points of excess. Cannabis is a big one. Cannabis being a big one. How negatively impacted my family that I used cannabis so much. It negatively impacted my work and a lot of different aspects of my life. And, we know that cannabis is a medicine. It is a very good plant. It's very good for us in many ways. But the amount that I used it was not medicinal. And there's some feelings that come with that.
Yeah, I'm interested in that process and in that experience of finding a balance. Yeah, it's interesting, this label we have of like medicine and poison. Because like we know like fluoride, for instance, that's one of those things that is certainly very toxic at a certain dose. Mm-hmm. Yet most of us brush our teeth with it and ingest it every day. Mm-hmm. And it's in our water and all kinds of things. And there's so many other examples. But like, I'm starting to see medicine, like when you spoke about cannabis, and it reminded me of our past episode we did on cannabis and both of our relationships with cannabis, and how instead of seeing something as like a medicine, I'm starting to see it more as, or things more as like energies. And how do I say it? Like tuners, like cannabis, for instance, when I was pregnant with Ananda, the first trimester was just really, really, I was sick and getting sick on a regular basis every day. And cannabis was the only thing that would, like I felt this internal shaking, which created nausea and everything, and consuming it, just like dampered it, like numbed the shaking. And so then I started to see cannabis differently when you're actually feeling a certain way and you can consume something, engage with something that changes the energy of how you feel so drastically. And then at the same time, you're seeing people use it who aren't, like I was sick, and to see people use it that aren't sick, like as in vomiting and stuff, like debilitated almost. Seeing people wake up in the morning and hit a bong or whatever, engage with cannabis.
I'm not doing it. So.
In that way, like to see how powerful it is to have it affect me, give me relief in such a big way, really changed the way that I looked at it. Like, oh, this is something that is such a powerful force that if I'm trying to like explain, I'm trying to like find a metaphor here that will help me.
If it can have such a big impact on someone who's sick, then it's having a big impact on someone that's well that they may not be aware of, or that may not be a positive impact. I mean, it's just power misapplied, and if you misapply power, then it's going to cause damage.
Yeah,
somewhere.
right.
Is that what you're saying? It's how I understand.
Yeah. And just trying to like put it in more even simpler terms, like what comes to mind is, say, a massage therapist. You could go to a massage therapist. A massage, we all think is generally we think getting a massage is a great, healthy thing. However, if your massage therapist isn't paying attention to the needs of your body and they go in really, really hard, like they could damage your fascia and all kinds of things. And so, yeah, it's like the healing is in the communication, in the awareness of the engagement. It's not necessarily in the act itself.
Yeah, I think that's where this idea of a panacea comes from, right? That like there's anything that can be just broadly applied that will just be helpful, and there's nothing that is like that. There's nothing that is applicable across the board. I mean, you know, I'm always trying to fucking prove myself wrong, but I think in my head I'm thinking about like air. You know, you gotta have air, but it's not the cure for everything. So, no, it's just so important that we have balance in our lives, and it's just for some folks, I think it's hard, and you know, whether it's from upbringing or what, there's a lot of different factors that go into the equation. And it's something that definitely came up for me with mushrooms. There was definitely a time where I thought, am I taking too much mushrooms here? I'm taking a lot of mushrooms really frequently. And I ultimately did come to believe that I had gotten to a point where it was detrimental in a certain capacity. And that's where
So how did you know that?
How did I know that? It was one of the more difficult ones for me to tell. Cannabis, I knew it was directly impacting me. The negative effects that I would experience from the mushroom, the overuse of the mushrooms, tended to show themselves in kind of weeks after, you know, and it gradually crept in where I felt just emotionally unstable. And granted, I was using a lot of cannabis at the same time, and I'm sure they were, you know, working together to accentuate that emotional instability. But I did come to recognize that I was just taking myself into very extreme states very regularly, and then the rubber band would snap back, and I'd be at home and just in tears, or you know, just stressed and not know why, and all these intense emotions, which you know you saw for sure, and I think maybe still, but then you probably attributed more to cannabis. I don't know if you ever really thought about mushrooms being a part of that.
I did have the thought. I mean, for me, I've had mushroom trips where generally it's been with the higher doses where I've felt that those were, I wouldn't go as far to say harmful at all, but like it was such a high dose for me that it was very challenging for me to integrate and come back into my day-to-day, and just felt really disorienting, like compared to some lower doses, where those I felt were more like I could reflect on with more clarity, versus the higher doses just felt so... There's one in particular that I remember really well. I just felt like I was spinning like 500 miles an hour for like 4 hours, and I just felt just too much. Like I just felt like that was too much. I went too far. And we were also eating mushrooms semi-regularly at that time. So it was a combination, I think, of just too much and just too much. Went over the top with the power.
Too much, too often.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've definitely certainly had that question often, I would say. Like when we were eating mushrooms together, like before we had kids, semi-regularly. Yeah, that whole conversation of, well, I think it's time to eat some mushrooms again. But is it? Are we overdoing it? Is this really what we need right now? We've had quite a few of those conversations. Yeah. But it is tricky because with something like mushrooms, an activity, an experience that requires such a transition, there's naturally, I think, resistance to it.
For sure.
So interpreting what is this resistance, and are there notable fears behind it that I'm avoiding, or is this just me communicating that, like, refocus, like, this is just a pattern that my body is ready to, my being is ready to transition from. Does that make sense?
It does. It's interesting that psychedelics, I feel like, are one of the few places where this is a part of the experience where you don't know whether or not your resistance is due to a intuitive sense that it's not the right time, or if it's your own fear getting in the way, or your own resistance to the transition. Whereas with other substances, it's kind of the inverse. Like with alcohol, for instance, your desire to quit drinking is often impeded by that same kind of resistance. Like, oh, maybe I should quit drinking. Well, am I just telling myself that because I want to quit drinking? Or am I just telling myself that because other people are saying that? Or am I telling myself that because it's really right? Or am I afraid to quit drinking because I'm resistant to the shift that I'm going to have to go through when I quit drinking? The same thing with cigarettes. Same thing with weed. Is my resistance because I think this thing is good for me, or is my resistance because I think that it will be too hard to make the transition? So that's an interesting thing with psychedelics. I don't have any concern that it's going to be hard to stop eating mushrooms, right?
Right.
So that's just interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of the inverse, but it's something that culturally, it's also tricky because we don't have a great we don't have a great reference point. It's not like our elders, we have elders around.
No, there was,
at least in our culture, that are able to, like, help us
advise. Yeah, there were so many times. I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's your state. Sorry.
Yeah. Like I'm just thinking of, like, exercise, for instance. That's something that as a culture, we're all pretty comfortable with talking, not all, but as a culture, there's not a stigma generally around physical activity. And if somebody's, like, over exercising, then you can, like, as a friend to a friend, be like, yeah, I think you need to chill a little bit. Like, it's clear this is kind of, you're going too hard and it's creating more stress than it's helping you.
Right.
And see the imbalance. And not to say that that's not possible right now with psychedelics, friend to friend, because I think it is, but it's just trickier when there's a stigma with it.
Yeah, it relates to cannabis more, I feel like, right now. Cannabis is something that if you try to tell a cannabis user that they're possibly using too much cannabis, then that stigma from years previously is going to weigh in on that cannabis user, and they're going to say, "Oh, you're just saying this, because you think it's bad for me, or you have this preconceived notion of what's happening. This is not bad for me. This is a medicine. It's good for me."
So true.
And so it's that again, that push and pull from one extreme to the other as we try to find a middle ground. But, I guess what I was trying to say when I started to interrupt you is it just shocked me back into the memory of the number of times in Jamaica where I consciously would say to myself, well, I guess I'm some kind of a guinea pig because I don't know anybody that's eaten this many mushrooms. There's nobody that I can go to and talk to about this. And I know that this is good for me. I know that I am helpful in this state to the people that I'm working with. And I think if I would have had a different lifestyle where it wasn't take mushrooms 3 times in a week and then the following week you spend that entire week trying to catch up on other work, real world work. If I would have been living like a shaman in a hut somewhere and I could just be with the experiences afterwards and allow it to settle back down and everything, then it probably would have been a lot better for me. So, again, none of this stuff is as simple as if you take this much, this is what happens and this is how you deal with it. There are so many factors that go into our overall state that can, contributing to how we feel in full. And that's what we don't really seem to have a lot of in our culture is this big picture holistic view. You think about antidepressants or you think about other pharmaceuticals. It's, you've got cancer, you need chemotherapy. You've got depression, you need an SSRI. You've got a headache, you need Tylenol. But where's that symptom actually coming from? So anytime we're using any of these tools, as you say, to mask the experience or the symptoms that we're experiencing without going to the root of whatever the issue is, then potentially we're turning all these medicines into poison. I don't know. Like meditation is something I can even do that. I have gone on runs where I will just be just in meditation so much that I will forget about everything else and not care about anything else. And, I've done it with work. So anyway, it's just really, really valuable for us to find that place of moderation. And I feel like that is really all about fine-tuning our intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, what is coming up for me is, like you say, it's not black and white. And I'm thinking of somebody who, for instance, has cancer and is really, they're in such a state, it's like tertiary treatment mode. It's like bring in the big guns mode. You just brought up chemotherapy, and another modality would be eating mushrooms every week or every other week or whatever until you can get to a radically different state of being, would be the idea. And, for somebody that's overall pretty healthy, that would throw them to an extreme that would be unhealthy. And it's hard to when you're in that place of, say, I'm just going to use this example of the person with cancer. I think a lot of what could be wrapped up in that state of being is a lot of potentially fear and a lot of doubt and a lot of really intense feelings that are going to be really hard to transition out of. Like there's naturally going to be a lot of resistance, I would think, to getting into a radically different place. Like it's all that's all wrapped up in the state of being you found yourself in. And I'm just using like cancer as just like an example that comes to mind. And I'm not saying like you can heal your cancer with mushrooms, but maybe you can, I don't know. But my point is that unless you have a feedback, like a point of feedback regularly with someone that you can trust and is familiar with whatever it is you're working with, then I could see how it could feel really unhealthy to be getting treatment, whatever that treatment looks like, whether it's chemotherapy, like chemotherapy makes you really sick. Like you get really sick and your hair falls out and there's all kinds of things that would freak anybody out. And, you know, with mushrooms, like there's gonna be some radical things that that you're gonna be shown that are gonna lead to radical changes in your life. And it may be really scary to go through all of that. And so I'm just thinking, like, how does one know? Like, how does one assess, like, this is something that's actually helping me, healing me, versus this is something that's hurting me? You know?
I think it is challenging to discern that in many aspects. And I don't really have a good answer. I mean, I'm still like right now, it's incredible, this feeling that I have right now of this guilty, kind of shameful feeling that I'm having over my tendencies towards extremism, and don't want to go into some extreme state like I have before of self-depreciation. But there is value in being aware that, you know, my extremism has been detrimental. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really actually clouding me quite a bit in this moment, and I'm okay with that. I want to be aware of that, and I want to recognize that it is helpful to some extent.
Yeah. I feel like you're in good company with people who are like successful people that are making willing to do things that a lot of other people are not. That seems to be kind of a necessary, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's kind of a necessary trait that goes along with people who are willing to be really courageous and push through uncomfort to get to the other side. Because you have to have that whatever it is that allows you to see that.
So it's like a singular focus. Like, I want this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this thing that I want.
Because there's a lot of what comes with that is like what I was just talking about. It's like the experience of making a big change, that the intention is to improve our lives. And we know sometimes we can find ourselves in very unhealthy situations and kind of have a wake up moment about it, whether that's a really unhealthy marriage. Maybe we've allowed ourselves to be abused in a relationship and we're just kind of waking up to that and we're done. And like sometimes we have to make a choice, and it feels really scary, and we have to be able to see on the other side of that, though. And that feels like, to me, people who are willing to do what it takes to, I want to say change minds, but it's really just like speak truth, I think, sometimes on things that are uncomfortable. Like, you have to be willing to really experience a lot of uncomfortable feelings and pushback, basically.
Yeah, I just don't like when those feelings are coming from myself. That's where this is kind of an interesting situation I have found myself in here right in the moment. Is feeling like I am the criticism. I am the pushback. So, when thinking in terms of what is medicine and what is poison, and our thoughts are, wow, such wonderful examples of, how quickly it can go from one to the other, right?
Are you, like, what's happening for you right now? What are you specifically?
I'm just feeling how my tendency towards extremes has impacted so many people in my life. And even like that thing that you're talking about, pushing through the social stigma around psychedelics, and what I've done over the years in the world of psilocybin, like it's had an effect on my family. My children, I can't say that my children benefited from me being arrested. I can't say that my children benefited from me living in Jamaica for however long. I can't say that we're doing okay now, but that was put a lot of stress on you, raising Theo or being with Theo for the first year and a half, 2 years, almost exclusively with you, and feeling that kind of distance that he and I had only very recently, like in the last really about 6 months, feeling like there's starting to be some repair there. And, there is the ability for this reflection to be a value or of detriment. And that's what I'm trying to bring myself out of the detrimental perspective and view it as, okay, I've learned what I don't want. I've learned what's not healthy. And so now I can make better choices. But it's hard to separate out the reality of the impact that those choices have had on people. And it's a little scary because I'm still kind of an extremist. I don't know that I may be a little more balanced now, especially having community in my life where I can put energy into that. But yeah, I do tend to turn medicine into poison if I'm not very aware, and how that then impacts others is where it starts to become this kind of shameful, guilty, self-loathing feeling.
Yeah, and even that it seems like it's kind of part of the extreme. It's kind of like a little bit of an extreme, like hearing you reflect on that. I have memories, of course, of my perspective in those circumstances that you just mentioned, being in Jamaica and your 2 oldest boys, and, with Theo and everything. And I remember the conversations that we had in making the choices. And like, I can definitely see how like, it's very natural, and it's very natural to question, like, was that the best thing that I could have done for other people in my life? And at the same time, well, yeah, what else could you have done if I imagine you saying no to the opportunities that presented themselves to you, for instance, with Jamaica and the retreats there, that would have seemed to me like a far greater poison than saying yes, from my perspective. I mean, that's why I continue to encourage you to move towards that. To see someone who is so just inclined, like if that was your child, if you were your child, you know, what would you have told them if they were to ask you, like, what should I do here? Should I follow my passion and all these people and opportunities that keep presenting themselves to me to do this? And you know, it's like, it's complex. It wasn't like you were in a super healthy marriage where they're, you know, I mean, there's like all kinds of factors that weighed in there to where, from my perspective, you were showing your children to be themselves.
I certainly took that perspective at the time, and I think there is truth to that. But, you know, it's this conversation of when is it out of balance? And, you know, there were definitely times that it was out of balance. There were, if I was talking to my child or my former self, you know, having the wisdom that I have now from the experience, I would probably advise them to find more balance and charge more money, because I was not making any money and my family was suffering from it, you know, which that's another aspect that we can look at in terms of this imbalance. It is a healthy way to not be hyper focused on money, but not like giving yourself away and not valuing yourself. That's toxic, you know? So, I don't know. It's all, you know, it's okay. It's all okay. It's all doing what it's supposed to be doing. I do still feel very strongly that everything is happening just like it should. Even things that we see as negative or a disaster are not. They're just life finding its way. But yeah, part of that finding the way is finding the balance. You know, it's like the antidepressant thing we went through. There's so many things in our world where you can see that we've gone to this extreme, just like antibiotics. We're just fucking fed. When I was a kid, I took so many rounds of antibiotics that I didn't finish. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's scary to think about. And somehow I'm still in pretty good health, it seems like. But, you know,
yeah, I mean, in retrospect, like knowing what we know now about gut flora and how it impacts mental health and everything.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. It's like societally, we have this tendency towards extremes. Here, we found the answer. Just apply it across the board, you know, and then 20 years later, we find out that, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have just done that. Maybe we should have let the immune system naturally build to a certain capacity, or, you know, maybe we shouldn't have just fed these chemical compounds to everyone who's a little sad. And I think we're going to find that with psilocybin and psychedelics as well, to a certain extent. You know, the majority of the people that I've worked with, I feel like, have had a similar perspective to psychedelics as with other classic medicines. And as someone who has taken a whole lot of psilocybin, I would say it's a lot safer for sure than our other forms of medication, but that doesn't mean that it's without risks and that we can just treat it like it's a panacea and across the board everybody just takes mushrooms. Even microdosing, I think that we just don't know enough. I'm not discouraging anyone from microdosing. I think it's an extremely small amount of psilocybin and probably will not have any or very much of a negative impact on physiology and psychology. It'll probably be overall positive. But you see people just saying, well, have you tried microdosing? Have you tried microdosing? Have you tried like I hear it all the time. Like I'm standing in coffee shops now and people are talking about stuff and they're like, have you tried microdosing? Or they're like, I'm microdosing. You should hear about microdosing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So it's just part of the human journey. We are, maybe as a species, we are a little bit extreme.
We are living in a pretty extreme situation.
Yeah, we've created an extreme
ball spinning.
We're the only animals
in the
that have sex for
sky.
fun. I mean, there's some animals I think that have like some, but there's very few animals.
The bonobos I thought were all about
bonobos.
sex
As
for
I'm saying,
enjoyment.
there's some animals. I think even I might be wrong about. I was going to say something about tigers or something, but I don't know. But obviously, like human beings have created like an extreme world of sexual exploration. So just looking at how we take things that are very natural as a species and then kind of fetishize them. Fetishize. I'm not sure that's actually a word, but I like it. Fetishize.
Fetishize.
Fetishize. Maybe it's that. So we create an adverb for fetish. But anyway, we do have this tendency to go to extremes and then figure out, oh, yep, that's too much. Got to pull back.
Yeah. Just don't talk about UFOs because then you're really extreme. Then you're
that's actually
lost
like
it.
That's a thing where I got to pull myself back from. It doesn't. They are here. It's happening, but it's not that important. It's not something that I need to spend all of my time contemplating or exploring.
Yeah.
Oh boy, this conversation brought up some stuff I did not expect.
Wow. Well, you're doing a pretty great job navigating it. Yeah, you wanna go lift some weights and eat some mushrooms and smoke a cigarette and drink some coffee and see if that helps you feel better.
As long as we're having sex while we're doing all that.
Well, you really are doing great, and I'm really proud of your growth, and I just love you so much, and I love watching our journey, your journey, and my journey combining, and we certainly have come a long way.
That's for sure. That is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of wrap us up here on this rambling, meandering conversation around poison versus medicine. Again, like how do we determine? Everybody's going to be different for every topic, but what's kind of the best advice you think you could give to someone if they were saying, like, I don't know if I am overdoing it with any given subject. What do you think? Like, how do you do it? How do you know when your medicine is becoming a poison?
I feel like it's like most things in life, it's an ongoing kind of dance and conversation, and it looks different for everybody. And it's like, I feel like the best thing we can do is have a practice of back to ourselves, like sitting with ourselves, just like sometimes, like semi-regularly, just like having a practice of taking some inventory. And that can be really simple, like journaling or like having coffee with a friend that you respect and feel like is a healthy person, you know, just like getting feedback with ourselves, with whatever that looks like, or meditating or whatever it is that we can come back to center and experience ourselves and just get out of the routines. Because I feel like the repetition and the echo chamber, like the doing things on repeat over and over and over again, that's where at a certain point we just start to feel off. Like, and we all know what that feels like, to feel off or like not ourselves, or something's weird, something's up, something doesn't feel right and I can't put my finger on it. I feel like that's a great clue to make an effort to get some quiet and just get some perspective, take a break from whatever you're doing, whatever that is for you.
It's a subtle, small, quiet voice that says, hey, something's a little off here. Sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Smokey, man. I know y'all can hear him in there, back there panting, and it's like 75 degrees in this room. He's had plenty of water. He's old. And, gosh. Whoo, boy, man. Where the hell did this day go? Now I'm like just feeling like I have been like such a horrible dog dad, and I'm just like, he's going to be leaving me, and I just love him so much. And I'm starting to wonder, like, at what point do we just, you know, help him transition so that he's not suffering daily. I'm wondering, how much is he suffering right now? You know, I mean, he's breathing so heavy here lately, and I don't know. He has been medicine for me. It's all medicine. You know, I guess that's something a friend of mine used to say years ago. And this guy was like a tobacco lover, and he was very involved in kind of shamanic world stuff, and he just had this, it's all medicine. It's all medicine. And I agree, it is all medicine up to a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most of our conversations seem to, for me, keep coming back to intentional community and just like gathering authentically with people in a way where we feel safe to be vulnerable and just get some feedback from people that care. And I'm so grateful that we're able to do that with Sanctuary and provide that space. Like just last night with the women's circle, half the women there said out loud, like, this is the first time in a long time that I've even spoken about what I've been feeling directly. Like, even in my closest relationships, like, you know, a couple women said, like, my husband and I can't remember how, it was like months, we've just been talking about the logistics and the kids and the work and the schedules and the bills, and, you know, like losing that framework to actually voice how we're feeling truly so that we can get feedback has been lost on us. And so sometimes,
should I post on social media and see what people think?
Not a safe space.
So, hey everyone, I'm feeling really ashamed right now of how much time I spent working.
Thumbs up.
Yeah. Like.
Well, I am really curious to know from you listening, if you feel comfortable sharing what your experiences have been around this. Like, what's something that you felt like was medicine that you kind of have struggled with off and on? Maybe like, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? And just sharing your experience could be really valuable for other people. So
there's a ton of people out there. I know from sharing my experience with cannabis that there are tons of people out there who have had a similar experience with cannabis. And I guess that's what I would just say to those of you who are still listening, is that the more you're willing to share your story and your struggles, then the more other people are going to be able to identify with that and find comfort and probably some direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is something that we come together with intentions of voicing and talking about with our group coaching programs that we have, not only the circles with Sanctuary in person and the Sunday services that we do, the discussion, but we have a group coaching program that we run series of it. And so stay tuned for more information around that. And if you're listening on YouTube, please do comment and share what you feel comfortable sharing. And yeah, please do like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to get notified, hit that notification bell.
Tell your friends. Thanks everybody for joining, and hopefully your day is medicinal.